So good evening once again, and I want to welcome everyone to this section. So just a brief recap on what we did in yesterday's class before we proceed. Anyway, what Mrs. Augustina just presented shows that that has in one way refreshed us on what we did yesterday. So we added another analysis category. Sorry, just a minute. So we added another analysis category where we started using Excel multiple criteria statistical functions, such as the Sumifs. And at the end of the day, due to trying to make sure that we all get it, we could not go beyond that very one. So we ended up explaining just one of these multiple criteria analysis function, which was the Sumifs. Now, this was the function we related to data analysis yesterday, and I took my time to explain the various parameters involved, where I said this one require supplying number data type within your questions variables. And then this is where you define the location where the criteria one will be mentioned. And then this is where you supply the criteria itself. Then add a comma and specify the location where the next criteria will be mentioned, and then followed by that criteria. So I said you continue in that same manner until you get to the last analysis criteria. So which we have all applied by my assumption. Now, what I am going to do now is to show us a little bit logic that is different from the way we apply the Sumifs yesterday. So going to our data or our dashboard, let's assume that we have a question like this to answer. So I would like us to also write down the question as I will be dictating it. And please let me also chip in this, just like the presentation you just did now, Mrs. Augustina. The next time I am going to take assignment, I would like to also have where you must have drawn your conclusions. Remember, I said it's part of it, your reporting, the one we did with PowerPoint. It is very important, not just displaying our technical skills. So please, let's also learn to, at the end of your analysis, just like those other ones you did, you are supposed to take us to PowerPoint or any text editor where you must have highlighted your observations, your recommendations. So please, let's work with that format as we proceed with the class, whether you are asked or not. Anytime you perform analysis, always remember that you are supposed to put together your conclusion, which covers your observations and your recommendation where necessary. All right, now I just want to twist that Sumifs, just because I want us to understand another logic about it, which I feel that it might be needed depending on the type of analysis you are performing. So I would like us to write down the question so I may get it back from us by the time I switch from the data set. Now, supposing we are asked to summarize, so the question is summarize total profit or analyze total profit. Analyze total profit where sales channel is equals to offline. So you are going to give us the total of that plus the summary of the same total profit where country is equals to Russia. So what's the difference between this question is that you first of all analyze the total profits based on the offline, you get us the total, which is going to appear as a single metric result. Now, what I want is that the company wants to know the total of the total profit for offline plus the total of the same total profit for Russia. So we want to add the total. In other words, the answer you get from the first one should be added to the answer you are going to get from the second question. This is the concept I'm trying to bring in here, what we call sum-if nesting. Sum-ifs nesting. That is, you are compounding. In other words, you are adding sum-if in two or more places in order to answer an analysis question. So let me go to my multiple criteria analysis dashboard and try to put down the question in the right context. Remember, I said you should help me to note it down. In case I couldn't get it, I will ask you to call it for me. So let me just put a question here. Let's say this is our question 2. Now, I want to merge the whole of this section for me to be able to present my question. So I want to merge. Now, what is the question? Analyze the total. Analyze the total profit where analyze the total profit where sales channel is offline plus the same total profit where country is Russia. So for one reason or the other, the organization wants to know this. There might be a particular decision they want to take once they get this figure. Now, where the country is Russia. I thought I typed Russia at that time. Okay, let me just reduce the size and see if I will get it. Okay, yeah, it's there. So let me just improve the appearance of my question. I am not going to be too fast today because I will spend the entire time almost teaching. because you have from now till Saturday to go through the video and be able to apply it. So there might not be enough time given to you for classwork. So just make sure that you document anything you need to document. I'll try to be not too fast. Now, this is the question. So what I'm going to do here is, where do I want to output the results? So the question is, analyze the total profit where 6 channels is offline plus total profit where country is Russia. So we want to analyze this from our data. So let's say we are to output the results here. So the first thing I am going to do is to activate the function. The first, here we are going to use 2 different Sumifs. The first one, let me break it down first. Here, to answer this kind of question, this is actually what I want to open our eyes to. Here, we are going to use 2 different Sumifs. The first one is the one that will give us the total of offline, the total profit where the channel is equals to offline. That is the role of the first Sumifs. The second Sumif is the one that will also analyze the total profit where country is Russia. Then the total, the answer of both of them, when they are added together, will be displayed. That is our target. So I'll start by activating the first one, Sumifs. Now, the next thing I am going to do is to specify the constant sum range. If you look at that question carefully, there is a constant sum range, which is the total profit, like I explained in yesterday's class. So I will simply switch to the data set and then capture the total profit. Now, remember I said at this point, we should adopt the letter selection, the letter argument. Instead of highlighting everything, just select the letter. It's faster to avoid issue of whether it is number or it is string. Then insert your comma. Now, the next one is where the range, where the first criteria is, which is the offline. So the first criteria, which says offline, is under set channel. So I'll click on the letter also, comma. Now, the criteria is to be mentioned. The criteria is offline. I don't want to pick it from there because I want to show us that you can actually pass in your criteria as a string, which means that you are to quote it. So after this, what you have done is that you have defined the sum range, which is the constant total profit. Then you have also defined where the first criteria, which I want to recognize as a string, is located within my data set. Now, which is what? Offline. So I am going to bring in string like this and type offline, just the way it is written in your data set. So you follow the case sensitivity. Remember that it is only the first letter of that offline that is in cap lock. So you have to follow it accordingly. Now you quote it. Okay. Now, which means that what we learned yesterday when we were going back to the dashboard to select to value, selecting other criteria, you can decide to pass them in by quoting them. That is what I'm doing now. So I don't want to pick it from here. So I'm picking it. Then after this is the end of the first question that says the total, summarize the total of total profit for offline sales channel. Now, what I'm going to do is to close this particular Sumifs to indicate that I've ended the first one. Then I'll bring in my plus. It can be minus. It can be times. That is the idea I'm trying to teach us here. Okay, you can be asked to analyze the total of a particular variable, multiply it by the total of another variable. You can be asked to analyze the total of a particular variable and subtract it from another variable. So the same logic, the only thing you'll be doing is that place I put plus, you change it to what? Minus, times, division. Now, once you have done that, you bring in the second Sumifs that is going to answer the question of summary of the same total profit where country is equals to Russia. So the same sum range is constant, which is what? The selection of the total profit argument, comma. Now, the next one is to define which location in your data set this second criteria, Russia, is mentioned, is in what country column. So I'll click on C, the comma. Then I'll also quote the criteria. The criteria is, if I don't want to quote it, I can as well come here and select it like this. It's still acceptable, but I'm not using that concept today. That was a concept I used yesterday. So I just want to show us this quotation or identifying your criteria as a string while you are writing your function. So I will write it just like the way it is written in my data set. Make sure that your spelling are correct. So to avoid this spelling error is the reason why we use the cell referencing by clicking. But if you are sure that you will always get your spelling right, you can adopt this system. Now, once you are through with this, you have to close the bracket. Now, once you close the brackets, you press enter. This is the answer. So what you have gotten here now is the total of total profit. That is the addition of total profit based on what? Offline sales channel, plus the total of total profit based on Russia as a country. Any question, please? I want to believe it's clear. If it is clear, so that I can move on. Is it clear?
Good evening.
Good evening.
Sorry. Hello. Good evening. Sorry, I joined late. I saw what you did there, but the question is what I'm trying to understand. Set total profit where sales is offline plus total profit where country is Russia.
So, what aspect of the question? I feel the question is straightforward.
Honestly,
Did you understand it now?
Are we trying to add offline sales?
Yeah.
Under Russia as a country? That's not what I'm saying here, because of the addition. Or you are just using the question to teach us this particular argument.
Yes, yeah, that is one of my priority. But if you also look at the question, I said analyze the total profit where sales channel is equals to I think where sales channel is equals to or is offline, right? Plus, which means that we are adding the total you must have gotten there. We are adding it to total profit where country is what? Russia. So I said that, like you said, I just want to use this to show us another concept. That is, we are now combining, even after that Sumifs. Now, I did just two now. I combined two different Sumifs to answer different questions. Now, you can even, after the second one, you can put plus and do another Sumif and then reference another variable. So the idea is that this is also possible while using Sumifs for analyzing data.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So if there's no other question, then that brings us to the logic around Sumif. Now, let's quickly go back to our slide and continue with the countifs. So we are just bringing this now. So assume we have ended how to use Sumifs when it comes to data exploratory analysis in Excel as one of the techniques. So let's look at the second multiple criteria technique function, which is the countifs. So the countifs function counts the number of sets in a range that meet multiple criteria. So this is also part of the multiple criteria we are talking about. Now, if you look at the syntax, there is a slight differences compared to the syntax of Sumifs, which I want to quickly draw our attention to. In the case of Sumifs, we mentioned sum range. So that constraint that the first argument must be number is not here. So you have the freedom to apply this or to start with any variable mentioned in your question if you are using countifs. But just bear it in mind that it is for counting the numbers of times a variable appear or is repeated in a data set based on multiple criteria. You can as well restrict it towards single criteria, which I mentioned yesterday. Now, let's quickly go through the parameters before we see how we can apply it in real scenario when it comes to data analysis. Now, criteria range one is just like what we did in the case of Sumif. This is where you define where the criteria one value is or located within your data. Then followed by criteria one. Now, I told us then that anything in the square bracket like this in a function parameter, it is recognized or they are recognized as optional. If you do away with them, you have no implication. Okay, but for you to apply the function, it is a must that it must have one criteria range defined and that criteria. Now, let's quickly look at our data and construct analysis question that can be answered with this particular countifs. So let me just merge this. The question is, let's say Q3. So let's say, let me merge this also and see if I can have. So the question, let's go to the data set so that we can draft it together. Now, that same question you answer with your, that same question you answer with the Sumif can actually generate counting question. I'll prove it to us now. Let's go back to this. Now, this is where we actually summarize the total profit based on two criteria. The first criteria was total profits where item type was equals to food, sorry, baby food, and country is equals to value. At the end of the day, you have outputted this. You have outputted this as your outcome. This is where you perform summation. Now, when you want to put your final report, which is your executive or your final conclusion, you would like to tell the company why one of the variable. If you look at our graph yesterday, thank God that we have the graph here. From the graph, it shows that Mozambique has the highest generated profits based on the applied condition. Now, another question can arise. What are the factor, or what is the factor? What actually makes Mozambique to have the highest profit? Is it that they had more number of transactions in that country, or the items sold in that country are more costly? As a data analyst, you need to factor this because the company have to be well guided in terms of decision making. That is when you will bring in, so to back up this summary that you did here, in a way of getting ready to answer that question, because they can ask you. Remember when we started this program, I said there are different types of data analysis. We have descriptive, which we always stay off the question, what happened? And then we have the diagnostic data analysis, which asks the question, how did it happen? So you should bear in mind that that question will always arise since you are performing this type of analysis. So in a way of asking such question, there is need for me to perform counting. Let me also have an idea of the total numbers of transactions that generated this, the total number of transactions that generated this, the total number of transactions that generated each of these summation value. That will help me to interpret my findings better. So what I will do is that I will just add it to this particular report, or I can just choose a different place. So let me add it here. So here I will just label it total counts. Total counts. So copy this format. Just select any of these aspects you have formatted. Click on Format Painter, and then click there. I have replicated that appearance. So this is where I am going to output my result. But let's go and capture the question. The question is going to be equivalent to this. So I think since I say, okay, what is the total profit generated where item type is equals to, or is baby food, and country is what? To value. So I will now change it to analyze the total number of transaction of trans where item type is baby food and country is to value. Okay, so this is the question, just to complement the other one. Now, the result is not to be outputted here because it's not a single metric analysis. So instead, the result is to be outputted here. So that is where I'm going to write the function. So equals to count ifs. My criteria range 1. My criteria range 1 is where the first criteria is. That is what? Selection of what? Item type. So I'll use the same letter selection method, comma. So my criteria 1 is baby food. So like I was telling us the other time, I can just come here and quote it if you are sure of typing it exactly the way it is. So this is another, I'm just borrowing that concept of the other one so that you know that it is also. So while we are selecting the cell range is because we are trying to avoid a situation where we might not correctly spell the criteria. Then comma, okay, now comma, criteria range 2, the location in your data set where criteria 2 value is, which is the country, the country. So I will also select the country range. Then comma, where country is equals to, so I'm using the string method instead of cell referencing method. Where country is to value, so exactly the way to value is spelled, follow it. And then that is all. Now you can see that we have nothing to do with the total profit now, because here we are counting. So we just focus on the criteria range and the criteria themselves. So once I press enter, this one is just 1. It outputted 1. So let me autofill and see, does it mean that it's 1, 1? Okay, so let's check this particular value. So I'm going to check whether that method I use is correct. So what I would advise us to do is to also start doing your own, but let me check first. Let me check the value I have for to value. If that is correct, I will know now. So this is to value for where the item type is baby. So I have just one of them. Let me see. Okay, so it's correct. You can see this is the total I have. Look at this value you have under total profit. If I come here, that is value you have here. But let's still go there and check for another to value. Let's see whether there's another one that meet the criteria. Another to value baby item, baby food rather. Baby food, if you trace it, it's not to value. So it did not count this one. If you trace another to baby food here, if you trace it, it's not to value. So it did not count that one. If you trace again, I just want to use few of them to confirm if what I did is actually correct. This is another baby food, so it's not also to value. Now, if for any reason, if I want to check the sensitivity of what I did, whether it's actually correct, so I will just replace one. This baby food that is not to value, let me quickly replace it with what? This to value, and see if my output will change. So let me go to my analysis now and see if it changed. Good, so it's counted true. So this is to confirm that what your function is actually correct. Any question, please? Any question?
Okay, so when you drag it down now,
Yeah.
the 2 is still representing the other countries, or this information is just for to value alone?
Yes, it's for where you counted baby food from only to value as a country.
Mm-hmm.
That's what you counted now.
Yeah, but when you drag it down now, does it now compute for the other countries? On dragging it down.
Yes,
when you
yes.
drag it down from
yes,
there.
yeah, you are correct. So these two that you are
Okay.
seeing here now, it means that what? It counted the same baby food for this country. The same baby food for this country. That is
For
what.
Russia. Okay. Okay, is what I
Any
wanted
other
to confirm.
question, please? Any other
Thank
question?
you.
Okay, so we are good to go. All right, so that is now. I want to also go logical, the way I taught us how we just combine Sumifs now. So let's say we are counting where I'm trying to analyze this kind of question now in the case of countifs as well. So we are counting for two different items now. We are counting for baby food and then we are also counting for baby food, and we are counting for another item. Let me go to the data. It's helped me to write down the question as well. So what we want to analyze here is that we want to count for baby food, then the result we get, we will add it for counting for cereal. So in other words, we are counting for two different item types, and we want to know the total count for these two item types. I believe that is clear, just like the way we did it here. So let's quickly go and get the question right. So our question here, thought I have my question listed before. Okay, so let's say this is my Q4. So let me merge the whole of this as well. So my Q4 is what is, let me try and change the question writing method. What is the keyboard? What is the total count or total transaction? Let's make it real. Total transaction where item type is baby food, and an item type is cereal. So let's say we are to answer this question. Now, this time around, our output, let's say we want to output it here. We are not applying it to other item. Let's try it here first. So what we are going to do here is to apply the same concept I used while I was showing us the other way we can apply the Sumif. So I'll start with countifs. The first range, the one that we count for baby food, the one that will count for item type equals to baby food. So I'll go back to my data. I'll get the range, this. Then comma, and then quote. In fact, let me use let me still use this square. We can get used to it. Quote, baby food. Then end it. Then that is the first one. So I'll end this and then say plus counts ifs. I'll take the same range based on what the question says, comma, quote your second criteria, which is cereal, the way it is typed in the data set. Then you close your brackets. If you want to add again, you put plus and then continue that way. So once you have closed your bracket, you press. So there are 14 of them. There are 40 of them. So if you have time to confirm, you can do it individually. Okay, let's just do it together. Let's just do it together. There must be a way of you verifying things before your final report. Let me count for Only Baby and take note of that. I will now count for Siri, take note of that. Then I will know whether if I add them together to give me this 14. Sometimes you need to check. So let me take this and then command, and then I will just select this. So I'm using cell referencing now. I'm not quoting. I'll output that one. I have 7. Then I'll now do it again. Countifs. Go back to the data, call the range, comma. I will use the same cell reference to avoid spelling error. I'll touch what? Serial. 7. So you can see a cell is very accurate. So if you add this plus this, you get what? 14. Any question? Let me get to respond before I proceed. Is that clear? Question, please, if there is any. No question? Okay, so let me proceed. So you make sure that you answer all these questions as your assignment. In fact, everything that we are going to cover today, please, you
Hear me?
okay. Sorry, were you saying something before, ma? Hello?
Yeah, I wanted to ask for this question now. The and where item type is baby food and item type is cereal is no longer plus. I
Yeah.
was thinking that and here is supposed to be multiplication.
Okay, so we can change it. That is not an issue.
No, I just want to know, like, if there is an inquiry that you are asked and the word there is and, does it have any standard meaning in Excel?
Okay, okay. Now, the and here means you are actually combining two. That is, you do for the first one and also do for the other one. So it can also represent addition, and it can also represent multiplication. So it depends on how you read it. It means that you are dealing with two different criteria, different questions in one.
Okay, but what I just wanted to know is that is the and a standard word in an Excel, maybe representing just like in mathematics, that and is multiplication. Is it must in Excel that where you are being as in where you encounter this kind of question and you see and without anybody being there to tell you that it is plus or whatever, what will you use? Is it multiplication or addition?
It's plus. It's plus. It means that is you are dealing with multiple. It's not multiplication.
Okay.
In this field, when you say analyze this and this, it's not multiplication. It's not multiplication.
Okay. I'm clear now.
You are doing two things, and it can mean you are adding them, or you are doing one and doing one standing separately. So it does not mean multiplication. Is that the only question, please, so that we can proceed?
It is, but I don't know if I can be able to do it unless I practice it.
Okay, so let me give us a 10 minutes to practice it. Let's see. Let me give us 10 minutes. So you can start now. Let me enable us to, okay. So any one of you can share his screen. Let's see who is ready to start sharing. Let me stop mine so just see how you can play around what we have done. Whoever want to try, please share your screen so that we can guide you if you are having any issue. So I will only give this chance for classwork. So once I proceed, the rest is you go and try it as your assignment. Who is sharing, or we should just continue? Then you have enough time to go through the video and be able to replicate it before the next class. What do you think? Is anybody sharing?
Maybe we can go ahead.
I should go ahead.
Maybe we can go ahead because I don't know where to start. Maybe I need to watch the video.
Okay, because you did not start with us, but I don't think we have done anyway. You started when we were about doing something meaningful. Okay, so let me just proceed. All right, so that is for countifs. We have applied it. So as a data analyst, you should know the preferred questions you can actually answer. So let's look at the last one under this before we look at the if itself. The averageifs function calculates the average of cells in a range that meet multiple criteria. So if you look at the syntax of average-if is the same with the Sumifs. So if you have mastered how to use the Sumif, you will not have issue with the sum, with the average-if. The only thing that have changed is where you have some range. Now it is average range, which means that whatever argument you are bringing here must be a number type. That is why I said the same principle that we follow in the case of Sumif. Then every other thing can be string, just like the way we did it. But the difference between the output is that in the case of sum, if you added values, let's say you added different values, and then you outputted the answer. But in the case of average if, it will also add the value but divide it by the numbers of what occurrence. 1, 2, 3. So that is the difference. But the syntax works almost the same pattern. It's just for you to know what has replaced some range, which must be a number type. Okay. So now if I go back to my data now, let me try and construct a question that will require some range. So let me just assume question 5. So this same question that we answer, let's say we want to answer an equivalent sum range, average if. So the question is that analyze the average total profit where item type is equals to, or where channel is equals to offline, where channel is equals to offline, and country equals to value, let's assume. So which means that same question that you answer in the case of Sumif, you now want to also analyze it for average. There are decisions that could be made when you get the average. So let's say analyze the total profit average for baby food item. And country is to value. So this is a tax. Let me reduce the size a little. So it's either you attach it to this to repeat it for all, or you output it as a single metric result. So the syntax is averageifs. Average range is the number type argument, which is total profit. Then comma. Then the criteria range 1 is where the okay, I thought I was working with offline. Okay, so I later switched to item type. So let me take this. Then the first criteria is since, oh, sorry, it's not mentioned here. The first criteria, oh, I thought we have listed it somewhere here. Okay, so what I will do is, let me just go back. I hope it does not change the configuration. So the first criteria is baby food, comma, the criteria range 2 is the country range, comma, and then the selection of to value. And then I'll press enter. So let's see if we have our output. Yeah, we have it here. So we have answered that question. So this is the total profit generated from baby food alone in Tuvalu as a country. I believe that is also, sorry, total average. That is total average. Total average profit generated from baby food item where country is Tuvalu. Where country is Tuvalu. Mrs. Onye, want to say something?
Yeah, please, can we repeat it once more?
Okay, so what we did, okay, let me just take it off. So just take note of the question you are answering. The question you are answering is analyze the total profit average for baby food item and country, or where country. So this will have been where country. Let's make it where country is Tuvalu. So I started by entering my average ifs function. My average range is the profit range, which is the only number type. So I use the letter method, comma. Criteria range 1 is the location in my data set where baby food is mentioned, which is this. Then the criteria 1 itself is the selection of the first baby food. Criteria range 2 is where the criteria 2 is mentioned, which is Tuvalu, which is in country. Then criteria 2 is the selection of the first Tuvalu, and then you press enter. That is the answer. Is that clear now?
Yes, thank you.
All right. So that is all about these multiple criteria exploratory functions in Excel. So quickly, there's something I want to show us. Now we have, if you check very well, all this while we have been using Sumif. That is, the sum function has been borrowing if, average if. So those functions, remember when we started from basic, we were actually dealing with them without the addition of if. After some point, at the level of intermediate, we started adding the if. At the level of multiple criteria, we started adding S. Now, we should also know that there are some analysis questions that can be answered with just if. So if itself is a function in a cell which falls under advanced that can be used to also derive meaningful insights from a data set. And that is why I want to focus on it before we shift our focus to the next analysis function, where we shall be working with automated system. Now, let's start by defining the if. The if function tests a condition and return one value if the condition is true, and another value if the condition is false. Now, anytime you are dealing with conditional function, like the ones we have been handling since, they actually have false value. But the reason why we have not seen the false value, because we always get our true value. The true value is the expected output, what you wanted to get. For example, when we answered this question, this is what came out as the true value. Now, had it been it wasn't correct, then it will now display what? False or an error. So always know that every conditional function has true value and false value. The true value is the value you get when it is true. The false value is the value you get when it is not. Okay, that is why we refer to the if function as a logical function. It's a logical function. It's a function that works with probability. You are not sure yet. It is only when the criteria is met that is when it will output true value. So let's look at the syntax here. The first thing you will, just like the way we were referencing sum range, average range, the same thing, the first parameter is the logical test. So the logical test is the range where the expected true value is, just like the way we were selecting item type, and then from item type range, we selected baby food, because baby food is located under what? Item type. So the same thing here. So the particular range of cells where you are expecting the true value, or where the true value will be compared with, or the false value will be compared with, it is what we refer to here as what? Logical test. Now you can see once you have supplied that range, followed by the value if it is true, then followed by what? The value if it is false. So this is just a random example I use here, but I'm not going to leverage on this because I am going to relate it with data analysis, not just for general application, where it's just used to manage or probably to assign values. Now, this function can be used to analyze and manipulate data in a cell, making it easier to execute to extract insight and make informed decisions. So my assignment on this function is not for general application, is how it relates to us as data analysts. What are the possible insights we can actually use it to derive from a given data set? That should be our focus. Now, I also want us to know that all these functions we are explaining, we have their general application perspective from data analysis perspective. So everything I'm doing is to relate them to what? Data analysis. The general user of a cell will not twist them the way we are twisting them. They'll probably use them to get some general value and then they move on. For us, we are using them to target insight, to get insight. So there's need for us to construct them in a way that they can help us to get those insights. Now, let's quickly go for the application. But before that, let me see if there's any other place. Okay, no, this is the next topic I'm coming to. So if that explanation, so we only have three parameters to supply rather, the logical test, the value if true, the value if false, just that. Now let's go to our data and answer a valid question with this if function. Now, supposing this is your sales inventory, and at the end of the year, you want to reward your customer based on their performance, and that performance is measured based on the transaction. Now, is either you say, okay, let's study the data together so that we know where exactly I can apply this. So here I have ID, I have region, I have country. Now let's say we want to, because the name of customers are not mentioned here. So I will just see how I can fit it to this particular data set using the if function. Let's assume that we have different managers that are actually managing this particular company across this different region. And for one reason or the other, the company want to award them in order to encourage them to work harder. So we'll assume that is the managers of this region that we're actually rewarding. Now the company will develop a model to reward them so that it will not be sentimental. It shouldn't be emotional. It should be something that they should be rewarded based on maybe the profit generated from each. So let's just say our question is that reward the regional managers based on the total profit generated. That is our question. Reward the regional managers based on the total profit generated. Now, you need to list out your rewarding item. What would they be rewarded with? So let's say we have car as category 1. Car as category 1. We have a generator as category 2. We have fan as category 3. So what we are saying is that based on certain criteria, if any of this region meets that criteria based on the generated profit, the manager in that region will be awarded with car. Then the next category, so we are going to say that car are the manager that generates total profits, let's say above equals to or above. So I'm using this to represent equals to or greater than. Let's look at the total profit margins here. So these are in thousands. Let's say above 700,000. 700,000. These are the set of people that will be, because I've typed equals to. So let me just use it. So greater than or. Okay, so let me still type it, but let me recognize this as a string so that it doesn't display that error it was displaying. Let me just capture it in a string. Now, then if you look at the same data, let's say above 500, let me just be editing. So I'll select here and edit 500,000, 500,000 should be awarded car. Then above 400, I hope we should get value. above 400,000. Above 400,000 will be awarded funds. So you have already defined your rewarding system. So this is called rewarding system. Now you will add another column. This is not a single metric analysis. This is going to be a comparison analysis or categorical analysis. So I will come here and say what? Reward. So I'm just updating this data now. Reward. So I'm adding that column. So which means that if by the time a value here is traced to the region section and it meets the criteria you specify, which is what? Above 700, it should be, what should display here should be car. Then if a value here is also traced to the region and the criteria and it meets the what? The criteria you specify here will also be what? Generator. So it is a cell that will now be adding it by itself. Now, this is just one scenario. I don't want us to limit this concept to just this, depending on the data set before you. For example, if it is stock inventory, this is sales inventory. If it is, I think this is sales and stock inventory, combination of both. Because stock inventory is where you track only item you received or that you want to go and purchase from your vendor. While sales inventory is the data system that captures the record of outgoing what product, the products you have sold to your customers. But if you look at this now, how do I know that this is for both? If it is sales inventory, you'll be seeing sales price. Like you can see unit price. Then unit costs will not be there. So for you to see cost, anything cost is talking about stock inventory. Anything sales, that is what? Anything price is sales inventory. So that's why I said this is both inventory, both sales and what? Purchasing inventory. Okay. Now, based on this, like I said, we want to reward them based on this specified criteria. So I will type equals to is a logical function. So pay attention very well and see how I am going to be maneuvering the logic on this function. Type your if, and then the moment you type it, you can see the syntax I was explaining there to us before now. So this is the logical test, comma, value if true, value if false. Now, when I was explaining the syntax, I said the logical test is the range where the two values will be compared with. The true value will be compared to that same range, and then the false value will also be compared based on the defined condition. So what is that range? That range is the region. That range is the region. So you are going to say if, okay, sorry, that range is not region. That range is the total profit. Because these managers from this different region are to be assigned this product or this item if their total profit meets any of this. So which means that this is your logical test range. So I will simply select the whole of this. So just to add it for future entry. So I'll put a comma. So what we are saying, but I want to make it more precise. I will explain in a moment, or let me just explain. Now, if you use just if, it will work. But at times, it's not as sensitive as when you add the at. The at there is just to make it precise, to be more accurate. Because that at, you are talking about a specific location. But you know what? If you check the way I selected now, this is going to generate too long
argument or function. So let me delete this. Come in. Let me remove. Let me shift this. Now, let's go back there. If the logical range is this. Now, I don't want to select it the way I selected before. You know, I selected it like this, which means that this has generated too long or lengthy formula. So by the time I end up writing this function or capturing all these criteria, the function is going to be too long. Excel is sensitive enough to know that just selecting the first one, it means that you are applying it to what? To all. In this case, don't go and start applying it in the case of Sumif. Now, which means that this represents the whole of this range. That is not the criteria. And that represents your logical test. Then, at if, like I said, I added at the other time, shift and 2 to add this at symbol. At if O2 is greater than or less than, is greater than or equals to, is greater than or equals to. I'm capturing the first category, which is the category profits that will receive car. So what I'm saying is what? At if, in this location, at if you are not sure of what will be in this location, which is this. If a value there is greater than or is equals to, because you said equals to or greater than 700. If a value there is greater than or equals to, then you type that value, which is what? 700,000. Don't put the comma. Then you add a comma. Once you add a comma, you just ended the logical test now. You can see that the whole of what you have written is the logical test. And that logical test is what is testing the condition, like I specified in my slide. Okay? So now, if true, what will happen? If true, what will happen? Now, you quote it. If true, it should assign car. You quote it, the comma, so you are done with that particular grading. You have already specified the criteria that will determine what will be displayed in this column for the first category. Now, you will now start again at if. So this is actually the collection of 2 or more if, because it's a statement that we are writing. At if, the logical test is still this. You select it. Then where a value in this same range is greater than or equals to, you target the 5,000. That is the true value. So everything that I'm defining now, they are just the true value. I have not started defining the first value. Then I'll do the same thing. If it's equals to 5,000 as 500 to 3, then assign what should be given to this set of region that will meet the criteria. Assign what you specify here, which is gen. Then comma at if again. At if the same range, if a value there is greater than or equals to what you defined here, which is 400,000, equals to 400,000, 1, 2, 3, comma, assign what? Assign fan. Assign fan. Now, what has happened is that I have taken my time to define the true value for all the conditions. Now, I will now supply one false value. That is, if it is not any of these true value, then how do I know that the region does not qualify to receive any of this award? It is when I see, I will just say, comma, I will just put it in string, comma, not qualified, not qualified, not qualified. So anywhere I see not qualified, so this not qualified is the first value for all the true values. Where it could not, where the criteria is not met, a cell will display in front of that region here in this column, not qualified. So which means that at the end of the day, if you trace the value does not fall within. These are the people that generated total profit less than 400,000. They are the one that will be given what? Not qualified. So once you have typed it like this, you can't press enter yet because you are dealing with statements. So you have to close. If you observe very well, I was just opening bracket. I wasn't closing them. Now, once you have defined your first value, you can now start closing them. And then you close with the same numbers of brackets you open. Remember that I did not open bracket for the last one, which is the first value. So I will count from my formula bar here. This is the best place to count because it can be long. They can give you up to 10 or 20 items to, to reward them with. So which means that your formula will be long before you come up with the first value as the last one. So, but whichever way it is long, just make sure that you check, you count it from the formula bar. So this is the first bracket I opened, 1, 2, 3. So I only open 3 brackets. Now, next time, you don't need to even count. Just count from here. 1, 2, 3. You define what? 3 criteria. This last one, not qualified, is not here. That is why I'm not counting it. So I will just click here and close with the same number of brackets. 1, 2, 3. Then you press enter. This one has been given car. Let's trace the value and compare it with the stipulated total profit before they can be assigned what car. This is greater than 700. That is why it's given it. Now let's autofill. Just double click here. You will see it. Some are not qualified. You can see it here, not qualified. Trace the value here, less than 400,000. Not qualified. Trace the value here, less than 400,000. Let's go there. Gen, greater than 500, but not up to what? 700. Correct. So if you go down, you see that what a cell has so no sentiment here. Any question? Any question? Because this is where I'm going to stop today. Any question, please? Is that clear?
It's clear until we practice it.
Until you practice. Okay, no problem. I know you will get it. I know all of you will get it because I try as much. Yes. So I try as much, like I promised, that I will not be too fast so that we can get it. So let me also hear from other because we are drawing the curtain here so that will not be too much. So the next class, I know we'll have a fuller house because I know there are about 3 or 4 persons that are doing night shifts. That is why they are not here. Probably the next week or this week that we are entering, they will be available. So what I am going to teach us, I will start, which I promised in the last class. So I'm going to show us how you can use OpenAI to draft or to derive analysis question from a given data. So once you learn this particular method, you will no longer stress yourself as a practice data analyst. Most time when you are given data sets that you don't really understand much, so the AI can actually
look into the data and be able to generate as many as possible analysis questions. So I will just show all the techniques how you can, describe the data before the AI can actually help you to draft the question. Then after drafting the questions, it is now less for you to know whether those questions are to be answered with Sumif or countifs. That is the reason why I have to take us through the manual. So if there's no question, so that I can quickly convert the video for us. But let me hear from the rest. Mercy, Mrs. Augustina, please, I want to hear from you. Are we good to go? It seems they have slept off. Are you people here, Mrs. Augustina? Mrs. Mercy, are you here? Wow.
Yes, I'm here.
Are you following?
Yes, sir.
Hope all is clear.
Yes, sir.
Until you practice also. Ms. Mercy, you are owing me a lot of assignment to.
I'm almost done, no.
Okay.
Just remaining little to complete it, yes.
Okay, so let me see if I can hear from Mrs. Augustina. Mrs. Augustina, are you still here? Okay, so it's like she's not still here. Now, I'm adding this to the assignment. At the end of the day, the company can ask you how many regions receive car and how many regions did not receive car, how many regions receive gen, how many regions receive a fan. You should also ask that question, answer that question. Please write it down. The question is, okay, let me write it here so that probably when they are watching the video, it will be clear to them. So assignment question, or let me say additional analysis to perform. So every one of you should perform this analysis outside replicating what I have done so far. I'm going to ask for it first thing before I continue in the next class. So after you have analyzed this, the company wants to know, they are asking you to provide this information. The first one is Q1. You are going to use the concept, one of the concepts that I've taught you in this section to answer this question. I don't want to mention it. I want you to factor it out. How many regions received car? Sorry. So how many regions received gen? So here, how many regions received a fan? So you are also expected to answer these questions. You should factor out. If you go through the video, you will know which of those functions that we have covered in this section that can actually help you to answer those questions. All right, so good night, everyone. See us on Saturday again. Thank you for joining.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir.
Welcome.
Yeah.